When we're talking about converting data from an outside system into QuickBooks, the most important thing to understand is what data will QuickBooks accept and what format is required. We're going to start with the customer list first. I'm going to go ahead and create 2 sample customers as well as 2 jobs under one of those customers. I know this is stuff you already know, but what we really want to pay attention to are the fields available. We'll then be looking at the data in the different import options shortly. When you are doing your conversion, it's good to enter about 5 to 10 random customers so that you hopefully capture every possible scenario for different fields that you will need to use in QuickBooks. In this example, I'm going to fill in all the fields at the customer card level so you can see what's available to use with the different importing options. This will be very fast because it's expected that you already know how to create the customer. So sit back and focus on the fields instead that we're putting data into. All right, so we're going to go into the Customer Center, and I'm going to create a new customer, and the customer name is going to be Fourlane, Inc. We're going to skip over the opening balance fields. We're going to go ahead and put in Fourlane in the company name. Now notice what it does down here below in the bill to address. So when you're manually entering data, QuickBooks will fill in additional fields for you occasionally. That does not happen when you're importing data though, okay? So the name, job title, phone number, email, work phone, oops, secondary, mobile, website, fax, and other. Okay. Now getting down to the address details, I'm going to go ahead and take away the name and put in 123 ABC Street, Austin, Texas 78787. In the bill to box, this data needs to show how we would write the address on the front of an envelope. The first line needs to be the company name, right? When you write an envelope, you put the company name on the first line, or the person's name on the first line. The second line usually starts the address. This is important to remember when importing data into QuickBooks. Bill to line 1 is company name. Bill to line 2 is the start of the address. All right, in the ship to, I'm going to go ahead and copy this across, but change it to 345 ABC Street and say OK. You cannot import multiple ship to addresses into QuickBooks using any tool. It's not part of the API. If you need multiple ship to addresses imported, we suggest using a job, and we'll show you how to do that later, how to import multiple jobs. I went ahead and copied that across. So let's go ahead and move on to payment settings. So the account number, we're going to put in 1234535. Credit limit 5,000. Payment terms net 30. Price level. Now notice we don't have any price levels set up, right? So again, when you're going through this process, you'll notice the fields that or the list items that you probably need to set up ahead of time. So if we're going to be using price levels, we probably need to import the price level list or set up the price level list beforehand. And I'm not going to set up any settings here. Okay. Preferred delivery method is email. Preferred payment method is cash. And I'm not going to put credit card information in here. You can import credit card information into QuickBooks, and we'll show that later, but you can't export it. And right now I'm just putting data in so that we can see how we can export, or how it looks when you export it. And I'm going to leave these as unchecked because I don't have a payments account set up, of course. All right, so sales tax setting. This is blanked out. What does this tell me? It tells me I need to go turn on sales tax. Again, this is why it's good, right, to test this out. So I'm going to say I do charge sales tax, and I'm going to add my most common sales tax item. All right, 8.25, and the tax agency. Again, I'm going very fast on this because the assumption is that you already know how to do this. Okay, whoops. All right, must close all windows. Let's get back in there. Okay, so back to sales tax settings. So sales tax code, I'm going to leave it as taxable. And then I'm going to say that the item is Austin. I am going to put a resale number in here. Obviously, if they're a taxable customer, we probably wouldn't have a resale number, but for the purposes of this demo. Okay, so now we're going to go to the additional items tab or additional information tab here. I'm going to put customer type of retail. Just use one of their customer types. Again, if this is a field you're using, you probably want to set the list up ahead of time. The rep, so I'm going to put in here MA. MA is not on the sales rep list, so I'm going to set up MA. Okay. And obviously Marjorie Adams wouldn't be the customer and the sales rep, but so I'm setting them up as a Marjorie as an employee. All right, so that's a big thing to notice because these have different numbers associated with them. So employee, we'll show that in a little bit what that looks like. So now it fills in everything for me. So again, probably something that you want to consider setting up ahead of time. One of the good things to do is also to weigh how much time it takes you to just manually set up, right? If you have 5 sales reps, there's no reason to figure out how to import them. Just put them in manually. It'll just take you a couple seconds. If you have 100 sales reps, let's figure out how to do it. Do some importing. Okay. All right. So custom field, I'm going to go ahead and define fields, and I'm going to call one special field. I'm going to choose to use it on customers and vendors. We're doing importing for both lists. So I want to make sure, I'll just use that same one on vendors. The other thing is that when you're importing the data, leave it as any text in the beginning. You may come back and choose multiple choice in the future, but you just don't want to have any errors that pop up because you're forcing a multiple choice and what you're importing 100,000 lines and one of the lines doesn't have one of your choices, right? It's just easier to make it any text in the beginning. Then after you do all the importing, you can go back and kind of force it to be multiple choice list type of thing. Okay. Also, don't make it required in the beginning. Any kind of requirements or pop-ups that we can expect from QuickBooks just are reasons why QuickBooks could possibly kick back errors when we're importing data. Okay. All right. And then in here, I'm just going to put in special. And then we're going to go to the job information tab, all right, and put in a job description, difficult job, job type of addition. Okay, I'm going to do a quick add that wasn't on there. It's going to be a pending job status, start date 12/15/2020, 12/17/2020, and 12/31/2020. Okay, so now I filled in this customer. I'm going to go ahead now and do one last step here and add a note to the customer. And I'm just going to put in their test note and say OK. Now I'm going to go ahead and create a second customer, and I'm just going to call it customer 2. And I'm not going to fill in any other fields, right? This field right here, customer name, is the only required field in QuickBooks when you're setting up a customer. So I just want to set up an additional one so we can see it on the list with no other data. Then I'm going to go ahead and create 2 jobs under Fourlane. So if I add a job, right, what QuickBooks does is says, oh, you already had job information at the company level. So it creates job 1 for me automatically, and now I'm just going to create job 2 as well. Okay, so it fills in those details there as well. Now we're going to go ahead and jump on over to the fields available when it comes to invoice importing. Now, of course, in this webinar, this training, we're going through and importing only summary balances. So a lot of the details, right, on the line items aren't as important. But even when it comes to summary balances, you still need to know what fields are important to import on your open invoices, open bills. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to set up the other charge item called open, because this is the item that we're going to use whenever we import the details into QuickBooks or import the summary transaction into QuickBooks. So the item code is going to be open. Okay, so again, I'm just setting up an item on my items list. It's an other charge item. I leave it as open. Open balance is the description. There's no cost. The expense account that I like using is AP Clearing, which is an other current liability account. Okay, and then we want to make it non-taxable, and then again the AR account that I use, or the income account, is actually AR clearing. Now we have another video in here about entering opening balances and why I use AP clearing and AR clearing, so you can go ahead and check that out. But just for now, let me go ahead and get this item set up. So anytime we're importing any kind of transactions for open balances, we're going to use the code open, so that way we're keeping track of it on both sides. On the any payables transactions, it's going to hit a payables clearing account. Any AR transactions is going to hit an AR clearing account. Okay, so now we're going to go through and create a sample invoice with an open balance. Okay, I can use my Fourlane customer. I'm not going to use Fourlane job 2. I'm just going to use Fourlane. And then notice that the class field is not available up here, right? So the next field we expect to see is class. So what we want to do is we want to go in and edit our templates to include all the fields that are necessary that we need to import data into. So I click on formatting and customize data layout. I have to make a copy. And then we want to go through here and enable all the fields that we want. Now class isn't on my list here, and why is that? It's because class isn't enabled in preferences. So again, entering this kind of helps you to remember, right? So I have to go to accounting, turn on class tracking. Okay, now classes are available there, and come into my customized data layout. Now it's already on the header, but we may want to add it to the columns as well too. Okay. All right, so I'm going to go through and make all the header columns, all the header fields available. You don't necessarily need to make them available like on the print, right? You don't have to show them to print. But if you're going to put data in the box, you have to show them as, you want to see them on the field, on the screen here, on your template here. Now QuickBooks will, if you import data, even if fields are not enabled, it will push the data into that field because the field just is there. You just don't see it, right? But it's better to understand what's, and put in a couple sample invoices so that we can make sure that all the fields we need are in there, okay? And then columns, same thing. I'm going to add service date, manufacturer part number, cost, other one, other two. Actually, I'm just going to add other one here. And I'm just going to add other here. All right, so I have to give it a header because otherwise or a title, otherwise the box won't have a title when I look at it. So let me expand this. So when you're looking at these fields here, the header, right, is all the fields on top. The columns are all the fields down below. We're used to seeing that before. A lot of these things are probably fields we wouldn't be using. Freight on board, ship via, etc. Maybe those would be used in here. So the header fields, a lot of them could be used. But when we come down to the actual columns, a lot of these fields probably won't be used, right? Because service date kind of implies that we had multiple service dates, and we're just doing an open balance. We're not importing multiple lines. So a lot of these fields probably we can get rid of. Same with manufacturer's part number, etc. So you can go in and uncheck those if you want to, but I just like to make sure that everybody's aware of what's here and available. So we're going to put in quantity of 1. We're going to put in a price of $50. Okay. And then I'm going to come down here and put all the work is complete and a memo. Put in memo here. Okay, we want to make sure that the print later box is unchecked and the email later box is unchecked, right? Because we probably aren't going to send copies of these out to our customers. These are just summary balances. It doesn't have the details. It's just allowing us to track what's open. Okay. Now we do have another ACE webinar coming up that will focus on how to import the details of transactions on invoices, sales orders, etc. But for today, again, we're just focusing on open balances. So I can say save and close.